continuing our study in the book of Revelation. And as we start, just to get us in the right mindset from what we're about to read today and learn, have you ever needed something from somebody to help you rise to an occasion? Maybe you felt out of energy, you were discouraged, something. In my time as an athlete, I can recall a lot of these times, especially during halftime, where a coach came in and needed to give me and us something to rise to an occasion, because if we went out like we did the first half, it was going to be embarrassing. So that's the most specific thing I have in my mind. But it doesn't have to be athletics. It can be anything. Have you ever needed something from somebody to help you rise to an occasion? Well, the book of Revelation served as that very thing for the early church. From the time of really the cross, past that, when Christians went through the worst things any group of Christians have been through on the planet, the book of Revelation gave them, more even than the Gospels, the book of Revelation gave them what that group of people needed to rise to an occasion. And thanks to that, we get to sit here in a Christian church. We actually have access to a Bible, and we have heard of who Jesus is and what He did, thanks to what that first group endured for us. And I wanted you to know, looking back on history, as much as anything, maybe more than anything, it was the book of Revelation that served as that halftime talk to get them to rise to an occasion and be great. Well, where we were last week, the book of Revelation, remember, it's not Revelations, it's the book of Revelation, is what Jesus told John, the last of the 12 apostles, to provide what this group needed to get through what they were going through. But I think it's more than that. This book has served as a lot of things over the years, even today. And we looked at 4 different understandings, and I'll go over those a little bit very briefly. I don't know where you are at with the book of Revelation. I don't know which group you tend to fall into, or if you are just learning about it, or if you have strong feelings one way or the other. Wherever you are, you're welcome here. But if you want this pastor and this church to take a very strong stance on this is what Revelation means, and anybody who doesn't think this is nuts, you're going to be disappointed. I will not take that position. This stuff is way too old and way too confusing for anybody with any amount of arrogance to say, well, we've got the right version and everyone else is cuckoo. I see no grounds for that, therefore I will not be taking that stance myself. So I want to jump right in to where we left off last week. John, through the words of Jesus himself, Jesus taught him, I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's where he was. And this is the first thing he shows John that Jesus does. So here we go. Chapter 1, I'm going to start in verse 12. John says, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like the Son of Man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand, he held 7 stars. And coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. Well, by way of reminder again, this is apocalyptic writing. And whether you are in the Bible or anywhere else, that kind of writing is full of a lot of imagery. It's meant to invoke a lot of feelings, not confusion, that's not one of them. But it tends to accompany it because it's not necessarily cut and dry like you're reading a newspaper. It's much bigger than that. This is like an epic adventure between good versus evil, where good is going to win. And when you read that kind of stuff, notice all the time in that section it was saying his hair is light, his clothes are white. Like, this is the images. It's not saying there's literally a double-edged sword coming out of the guy's mouth. It's an image to try and get some feelings in you. That's apocalyptic writing. It's very symbolic by design. And one of the things we have to talk about now, because as we move through the book of Revelation, it pops up time and time again, and that's there are some numbers in apocalyptic writing that mean stuff. The number 7 is one of them. You probably saw that here. 7 gold lampstands and 7 stars. And if you're wondering what that means, you're like everybody else. We're wondering what that means. The nice thing is, at the end of chapter 1, John tells us what it means. The stars are angels, the lampstands are churches. Mystery solved. That's nice. I love it when they do that. However, what is the significance of the number 7 in apocalyptic writing? Well, here it is. To teach you that, I have to first teach you the significance of the number 3 and the number 4. Because that's where 7 comes from. 3 is considered the divine number. Anything uncreated has to do with 3. For instance, we worship the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, which are 3 in 1 that make the Trinity, right? It's divine. It's uncreated. There's a reason there's not a 4th member of the Trinity. And there's a reason there's not just 2 members of the Trinity. 3 is the divine number. Uncreated. 4 is the created number. It deals with earthly things. How many directions do we have on a compass? 4, north, south, east, and west. The 4 main elements on our planet are air, fire, water, and then ground or earth, right? 4. There's a reason for that. So, 3 represents things uncreated. 4 represents things created. Put them together, and you get 7. 7 represents everything combined together. All things created and uncreated. All things heavenly and all things earthly combined together. That's why the number 7 is often referred to as the number of completeness. Have you heard that before? There's a reason why, because it's completely everything. All stuff made and all stuff that was around and nobody made. We together on that? All right. So 7 churches and 7 angels has a little bit to do with that. So now let me break down these 4 understandings into it. And then we're going to do something I'm not sure too many pastors in the right mind have attempted. We're going to try and get through 7 letters in the book of Revelation in 20 minutes. We'll see what we can do. I think we can do it. It's my goal. But before we do that, we need to understand these 4 main approaches to Revelation before we get into these letters. And you decide where you're at. There's good arguments for each of these 4. One of the views is preterism. And they believe the 7 letters that we're about to read in the first 3 chapters of Revelation were written to 7 specific churches in a specific part of the world during a specific time, right around 100 AD. And anyone who lives after that, who tries to apply that to their life, is really reaching, according to the preterism view. The historicism view says, no, those 7 churches represent 7 times in history, 7 chunks of time. And so, you want to know which one to apply to you? Figure out where you are in history, and then take that one and apply it to you. That's the historicism view. The futurism view says, no, we agree with the first guys. That they're just 7 letters to 7 churches at particular times. We're not saying it was in 100 AD, but there's some specific time it's in reference to, according to the futurism view. Then there's the symbolic, or the symbolism view. And they say, these 7 things we're about to read are good for everybody at all times. So no matter what part of the planet you're on, and what century you live in, take a read of the first 3 chapters of Revelation, and as they describe 7 different churches, you look at your own and see which one fits in with it. That's the symbolism view. I don't know where you're at on that, and to me it really doesn't matter. You decide. I'm going to take you through what those 7 are and try to do my best to let you know where all 4 of these people are seeing these things. Okay? So here we go. Let's start with church number 1. It's the church in Ephesus. Not because it's the best church, it's just the first one listed that Jesus started talking about to John. The church in Ephesus. I'm going to start reading. We'll put it on the screen in Revelation 2, starting in verse 2. Jesus says, I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked people, and you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and you found them false. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name, and have not grown weary. Yet, I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love you had at first. Consider how far you have fallen. Repent and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. The historicism people say that Ephesus church represents a time from right after the cross until 100 AD, those 70 years. And the book of Revelation was written to really the last half of that group. So the first generation of Christians have come and gone, and now the church at Ephesus is being run by the young ones, the whippersnappers. Did they say that at the South? Okay. I don't know. We grew up saying it in Iowa, so I hope it worked down here. Well, that's where we're at. And here's what they're guilty of according to the book. You heard a lot of positive stuff right at the beginning, but it says you've forsaken the love you had at first. You are guilty, whippersnappers, of becoming complacent. At first, Jesus wasn't just a component of your life. He was the center of your life. Now, you're just kind of going through the motions. You're just doing church. That's the love that you lost. You're not embracing the community like the first group of Christians did. You're not sharing the gospel with enthusiasm and passion like the first group did. You're just going through the motions. You're serving a little bit, singing a little bit, reading a little bit. That's what you're doing. The good news is, it's possible to regain a lost passion. Repent and do the things you did at first. If you can rekindle that fire that is lost, things will go much better for you. It's always possible to rekindle a lost flame. Here's the bad news. If you don't, Jesus says, I will come to you and remove your lampstand. Do you remember what the symbol of lampstand is in the book of Revelation? Your church. If your church doesn't stop being complacent, get off the spectator seat and get in the game excitedly, your church is going to die. According to Revelation chapter 2. That's the church at Ephesus. So you can view it however you want. Let's get to number 2. Here we go. This is the church at Smyrna. Here's what Jesus says to them. I'm not going to read all of the things he says, just little parts here and there for time's sake. Okay? So I want to get through all 7 of these this morning. I'll just look at 9 and 10, verses 9 and 10 here. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I, Jesus says, will give you life as your victor's crown. The historicism view says this already occurred. This church to Smyrna represents from 100 AD to 313 AD. Why is 313? That's such a specific number. Yes, because that's when Rome became officially a Christian empire. But between 100 and 313, Christians on the planet went through literally the hardest things any group of people went through at any point in history who called themselves Christian. And it's not close. It was awful what happened then. So the historicism view says, yeah, that represents the worst possible suffering they went through. Now, a couple things here. It's kind of a play on words where it says, I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and they are a synagogue of Satan. I don't know if you know this or not, the word Satan literally means slander. And so what Jesus is essentially telling them with some neat literary tools is these Jews who are calling you not real religious people, that is coming from the accuser, the slanderer, Satan himself. And there's a reason why Jews were doing that from a practical standpoint. At that point in history, under Roman rule, you could only worship your own God. I mean, you had to worship the Roman Empire, basically, but you could worship your own God in your own town. You left your town, you're not supposed to do that. Unless you were Jewish. For some weird reason, the Jews had an exemption. They could worship Yahweh wherever they went, as long as they paid their taxes and didn't cause a problem. They were pretty good at that. And so when these Christians came on the scene, the Romans couldn't tell the difference between the Christians and the Jews. And that bothered the Jews because they believed these Christians were whack jobs. Is that a phrase they say in the South too? That's not a Bible verse. That's coming from me. They did not want to be lumped in with these others. Like, we should get our exemption rule, but don't let this crazy group of Christians get associated with us. They're way out there. And so that's partly what Jesus is referring to right there. And he mentions, you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Well, now we have to talk about the number 10. The number 10 in apocalyptic writing is often commonly associated with a set number that is complete when it's over. Now, what does that mean? Well, most of us are born with how many fingers and toes? 10. So when it says you will suffer persecution for 10 days, it doesn't literally mean likely you're going to go through really hard stuff for 10 days, and on the 11th day, woohoo, it's over. So don't be counting down the calendar like that. 10 means Jesus has a set period of time where you are going to go through really hard stuff. But it will come to an end. And when it comes to an end, you will have fulfilled the whole purpose of going through that hard thing, those hard things, for that 10 set period. That's what the number 10 is supposed to tell us. I find it kind of interesting that it's the devil that puts you in that. Jesus says, when you go through hard things, don't you dare for 1 second say to yourself or anyone else that I'm punishing you. Your betrayal, your rejection, your loneliness, your tragedy, all of the awful things that human beings go through, that's not punishment from Christ. He says, I'll come in at the end of that set time and give you what you need. But that's not me punishing you. I'm allowing something to happen for a far grander purpose. That's supposed to be what's happening there, at least from the symbolism view. Okay? Third church is the church at Pergamum. This is my favorite word in the whole list. The church at Pergamum. We'll look at chapter 2, verse 13. Just one verse out of this one. Jesus says, I know where you live, where Satan has his throne, yet you remain true to my name. You did not renounce your faith in me, not even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was put to death in your city, where Satan lives. The historicism view says this took place between 313, remember when Rome became a Christian nation, to about 500 AD. Now here's what's significant in history in that time. That's essentially the birth of the Catholic Church. And the people who are historicism people hate the Catholic Church. John Calvin, Martin Luther, they're the ones who came up with this historicism view of Revelation for the most part anyway. And they do not like the Catholic Church. They think the Catholic Church is essentially the devil incarnate. So, if you have really big problems inside with the Catholic Church, you might relate to this. If you don't have hard things about the Catholic Church, you're going to think the historicism view is a little weird. And that's okay. I'm just letting you know where it came from. But Pergamum is the capital of Asia Minor, a Roman province, a pretty significant one. It's like our Washington, D.C. And notice it says twice in there, this is where Satan has his throne. This is where Satan lives. I mentioned this last week as one of the major themes in Revelation. That Satan is a real being with a real personality and a real goal. And our culture does not like to talk about him like that. We like to talk about Satan as this evil force that has just kind of always existed. And not a guy with a pitchfork and red horns. Let's just leave that whole idea. But the book of Revelation will constantly treat Satan as a real being with a real personality and a real goal. And what they're describing here, according to the symbolists, or the symbolists, I don't know how to say that word. Symbolicism? There we go. Symbolicism view. What they're saying is, look, that's a reference to a place where the government is doing evil things without even trying to do evil things. And it's because they are listening to the father of lies, Satan, and fulfilling what he wants without trying to. They're not saying they like Satan. They just have abandoned any opposing value or view of good according to the grace of God and the truth of Scripture. Therefore, when you do that, you tend to fulfill what Satan wants. In fact, you treat him like he's on the throne. And that he's living there calling the shots. Pergamum was the government capital, and everything coming out of there was bad, especially during that time in their history. Number 4, the church at Thyatira. It's my least favorite word to say in this list. Thyatira. 2 verses here, starting in verse 19. I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. The historicism view says this is the largest chunk of history. This is 500 to 1500. This is the peak of the Catholic Church when it's coming into its prime. Did you notice where Jesus is saying pretty much in all of these, I know your deeds. I know your faith. I know what you've gone through. I know where you live. Those are all meant to be things of comfort. Wouldn't you love to hear Jesus say to you, I know what you're going through. I know deep down this is how you feel. You know it's not coming across that well. I know this about you. Wouldn't you love to hear that? So, if you would love to hear that, send somebody a text, a card, or an email, and tell them that. And let Jesus use you to be that for someone else. I don't know anyone who can get enough of hearing. So he has been comforting each one of these places, whether it's specifically or symbolically, whichever the case might be, there's always a big chunk of encouragement in you. But he says this weird thing about this Jezebel. Again, apocalyptic writing is symbolic. It's not literally talking about Jezebel. That's in reference to an Old Testament story. So in case you don't know that story, here's a very brief version of it. There was a Jewish king named Ahab who loved his country. And he married a woman named Jezebel, who was not only not Jewish, but didn't like the Jewish country. Thought these people were terrible. Why she went into this wedding is beyond me. But her goal was to come in and fix all of these weirdos in Israel. She didn't love Yahweh. She loved another entity she believed existed called Baal. And Baal was this god who basically said, the more you do what you want and how you want to do it, the happier I am as a divine god. That was Baal worship. You can see why that grew in popularity, right? There wasn't really any discipline. The only time you got in trouble with Baal is if you weren't indulging yourself enough in all the things you want. That's Jezebel who brought that in. And so, Jesus reprimands this church in Thyatira using Jezebel type symbolism. It's a symbolic representation of the dangerous teaching of indulgence. Look, you just do what you want to do. You figure it out. So if this is what you want and you go down that road and it doesn't make you happy, fine, pick a different road. Try that. It is just fine to love Jesus and take the Bible lightly. You can do both. It's fine. That's Jezebel type teaching. And also, I've got it in here because it popped up. When you see sexual immorality mentioned in apocalyptic writing, again, it's all meaning something. That's a reference to spiritual unfaithfulness. Like, I don't want to just be married to God. I am happy to have a bunch of mistresses around. I don't want to be tied down to commitment. That's often what that's a symbol for. Not necessarily specifically that immoral behavior as much as the complete immorality of just doing whatever you want, however you want to do it, without caring. Am I going too fast on this? If so, I'm sorry. There'll be a video up later. You can go back and rewind. We're doing it on time. We're going to get through this. I'm excited. All right, let's get to number 5. The church at Sardis. Starting in chapter 3 of Revelation, in verse 1. I know your deeds, Jesus says. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Wake up. Strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have found your deeds unfinished in the sight of my God. Remember, therefore, what you have received and heard. Hold it fast and repent. If you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what time I will come to you. Yet, you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. They will walk with me, dressed in white, for they are worthy. The historicism view says this is 1500 to 1700. This is the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. The beginning of the Baptists, the Methodists, the Lutherans, those kind of things. The reason we have a church that we're sitting in is this point in history, 1500 to 1700, when these kind of churches and denominations began. That's the historicism view. Now, Sardis was this interesting town that was on a hill. In fact, one side of this hill, I think we've got a picture of it, was just this really steep cliff. And it was so steep that the town never even put guards on the city wall on that side because they thought, who can climb this tall cliff to get to us? The town of Sardis was conquered twice in its history. Guess how?
Up the side.
Two groups of people at 2 different times in history climbed these cliffs, and when they came into the town, they found the town sleeping and conquered the town. You see why Jesus says, wake up? What an interesting, clever reference to their history. That's what caught them. They were napping, pretty arrogant, thinking nothing could touch them. No one could beat them. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Now, it says something kind of graphic there. It says, you soiled your clothes. So now we're going to talk about this symbolism in Revelation. White and bright clothes in apocalyptic writing always are a reference to really good character. being honest, saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Things like that. Having integrity, compassion. Bright clothes mean that. When we read about Jesus earlier, remember how he was dressed? In these bright clothes. When he says, you've soiled your clothes, you can guess that means a compromised character. So he's talking to a group of people, according to the symbolism view, who've compromised their character. But the good news at the end, there are a few. There are a few who won't even consider doing whatever it takes to get the most friends. It's pretty high pressure today, and growing at that. That's the church at Sardis. Let's get to number 6. The church at Philadelphia. Chapter 3, verse 8. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that's going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. The historicism view says that's the church from 1700 to 1900. In case you're wondering what that is, that's the missionary age. That's after these denominations got off the ground, and they started sending Christian missionaries all over the planet. And interestingly enough, to this church, it's the only church in the list of 7 where Jesus doesn't say anything bad or negative to. It's all positive. And the historicism view says, yeah, of course it's positive. This is when the church finally started doing what they were supposed to do way back when Jesus first left. Well, of course it's not going to say anything to that. But what I like to read into this, in addition to that, is what the symbolism people say. And they say, one of the things, this open door thing, is that there's an opportunity. Meaning, your suffering as a Christian is never meaningless. The stories you have that you haven't told many people, or maybe anybody, the feelings you have, the lows that you've gotten to, the dark part of your mind that you try to avoid, that stuff actually has meaning. It's not just there. One, it reveals things about you you need to know. Do you know how patient of a person you are? You don't know until your patience is tested, right? Until you go through something hard. You don't know how kind you are, how courageous you are, how compassionate you are. You have ideas, but you have no idea until you go through something hard. And then that stuff doesn't create it, it just reveals what's already there. That's part of the meaning of hard stuff, but not only that. Something far greater when it comes to the missionary age and the gospel. The only thing that ever melts a human heart and wins people over to you who are originally hostile and upset at you is one thing. Suffering. That's it. That's the only way. If someone's mad at you, the only way you're going to make them not be mad at you is suffer. Suffer for them. In a way you don't have to, or maybe even want to. Christian suffering always has infinite meaning. Those are just 2 of the very possible ones they are. Last church. The church at Laodicea. Jesus says to this church, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. That's a very nice way of saying bark. You say, I am rich, I acquire wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear so you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes so you can see. The historicism view says this is the time that we're in right now as a church, from 1900 on. And the symbolism people say, this is basically saying to people, You know the gospel, you just don't do much with it. You don't take it deep down into your own life, and you don't take it far out to anybody else. It's just there. You're lukewarm. You got nothing against it, but you're really not for it either. You know it. You'll sing about it once a month or a week. But that's about it. That's what the symbolism people say. And twice it mentioned nakedness. Did you see that? If bright clothes mean great character and soiled clothes mean bad or compromised character, guess what nakedness means? The absolute worst character there is. Isn't that interesting? That the worst character that Jesus describes throughout the letters to the churches aren't the ones who've lost their passion, or the ones who become complacent, or lazy, or slandering. It's not those people. It's the people who refuse to take a stand for anything. The worst thing, according to Jesus, from a character standpoint, is just being wishy-washy. Just trying to make everybody happy without taking a kind of stance on what's good and noble and pure and good. That's the worst. Those are the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, by way of summary. Now, I hope you spend some time looking at it. In conclusion, here's what I want to say. Is I read all of these words to Jesus, to all of these churches, whether specifically or symbolically, it makes me think of temperature. It makes me ask myself, am I more of a thermometer or am I more of a thermostat? A thermostat is something you have that controls the temperature in the room, if it's working correctly. And a thermometer is just something that tells you what it's like in the room. So, as I read through all these words about Jesus, of what it means to love Him and treasure Him, and what the world loves and treasures, forces me to think and wonder and ask, am I shaping the environment I'm in, or am I letting it shape me? Which one am I more prone to do? Do I just want to keep the peace at all costs? Or am I willing to take a stance on something, not angrily, just convincingly, passionately, not worrying about how others react to it?